Order. This is Financial Management Committee. It's October 30th, 2023, 5 p.m. Call the meeting to order. Start with the invocation.
Lord, we come before you at this time and we are asking for wisdom to make decisions that are right in your sight. We know that your law is supreme. It's not temporal or transient nor provincial. It is the supreme law, absolute truth. And Lord, we are so mindful of the fact that when we come before you, we're looking for the welfare of this county. We're trying to do those things that are right, to set aside our biases and differences so that we can come to a good conclusion that's right in your sight. Help us to always seek that. Lord, as we deliberate, may we be of good nature, good cheer. Help us to always keep the citizen foremost in our mind while we're making these decisions. We ask this name in your Son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. First up on the docket, we've got approval of the agenda. If everybody wants to take a second to look through.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next up, we've got all new board members. Want to introduce, I think everybody knows Bob Brown. We've got Terry Boyd, and then a new face here, Mr. Todd Kerr, joining the Financial Management Committee as well. So, first item up with the whole new committee here would be election of chairman. Are there any nominations for chairman?
I nominate Colin Zimmerman.
Second.
Any other nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Second up, election of vice chairman. Any nominations from the floor?
I'll nominate Todd Kerr for vice chair.
I'll second it.
Go ahead. I don't want to second both of them, so.
I'll second
But I
it.
like to be happy.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously as well. Next up is recognition of the public. We do have a big packed agenda, and I think we've got a hard stop at 5:59 for the commissioners. So with that said, anybody from the audience like to? Gary's looking at me like he's got something good to say. Yeah. Right. Well, thanks everybody for being here, first of all. All right, moving right along. Last time we met was June. It's been a little bit. So approval of minutes from June, if everybody wants to take a quick look at the minutes from last meeting.
I'll abstain, I wasn't here.
That's true.
Motion to approve.
What's that?
Yeah.
Can they approve it based on the form?
They can or abstain.
Can they approve it based on the forms? Why I'm asking, because you don't have enough members to actually approve the minutes unless you just approve them as
That were
form.
present, that is.
Mhm.
You'd have to approve them as form only,
Improvements form.
yeah, instead of what's content, because there's not enough members to approve.
Okay.
Since Director Langford's not here.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve as form. Is that what I need to say?
Instead of content, is that?
Correct.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, we'll start with the report of the committee chairman. Wanted to look into account analysis of disposal fees. I think David kind of looked into that a little bit. Did you have?
Jimmy, go over it really quickly.
Yes, please. Yeah, I know we got a lot of other stuff.
If you open your packet to page number 8, and there's a couple pieces and a couple of years here, so I'll go through it briefly. Toward the bottom, you'll see it says total general fund, the very last, and it's got 198,711 is your appropriations, 201 revised, and 194,435. That is the total in the general fund, but you're going to have to subtract out that 184,572.18 right above that, because that's actually tire disposal, which is the flow-through grant. That's what it slows
Oh,
down
there it is.
everybody's.
Okay.
Is it page number, I'm sorry, is it page number 6? That's what it is. Yeah, there's a little 4 above it. I'm sorry, I looked at the wrong number.
What is
Okay.
their number and then?
Yeah, there's a number.
Which
from-
of the numbers?
I'm sorry, is everybody on page number 6?
6, okay.
But there's a number on the bottom, and unfortunately, there's one that says page above it, but that's from the original report.
Got
It's the
it.
Munis
Yeah, it's
system.
this one.
That's from the Munis report, but the actual report for the packet should say page
Four.
6.
Yeah, that's from the Munis system. This is the actual page I'm
Okay.
spending for.
So if everybody can kind of ignore the first one that says page, if you go to the bottom of the page, it says total general fund, and if you look, the third column from the right is 194, 435, 93. That is in the general fund, the total amount of disposal fees, but the number immediately above it, the 184, 572, 18, would have to be subtracted out, which is gonna leave you somewhere a little over $10,000. And of that, if you look on page number 4, page number 4,
Thought we were on 4.
No,
We're on-
6.
We're on 6. Thank you.
things got me confused. If you look on page number 4 and you go up, there's like, third column from the right, second one up, there's $1,190.15. That's actually disposal fees and EMS, which is for medical supplies, such as syringes. And then to actually pick up the remaining of the numbers for like the 2013 year, you would have to go over to page number 9. There's another $23,821. So all in all, we're spending somewhere around $33,000 a year just for disposal fees. That's total for the haulers to haul off the dumpsters here. You ever take, there may be a few more items in there.
And this is on top of our annual.
100,000, yes.
Okay.
That was the reason it came into question, because it was supposed to cover all our tipping fees, and the haulers are charging us with no credit for the tipping fees. I think that's how it came into play, was the question. And
We're giving $139,000.
133, so.
133.
But you gotta remember, the 33 is to pay haulers, so there's their cost to haul it off, but they do get charged tipping fees.
And
So we don't know how much of that's tipping fees.
if I may speak, at the Resource Authority, the board, including myself, last time voted to remove the $100,000 straight fee that we're paying. But that contract is a contract with the two cities, so that's gonna have to be worked out. I don't know if they can remove that, or
I think
legally,
probably
I don't know how that's, I'm just bringing it to your attention. I don't know how that'll work out. But
probably
they-
the best would be to remove it unless they can calculate the amount we're paying in those haul-off fees that are tipping and give us credit for that in some way.
I agree.
Which I don't think they can.
I
Because the
agree.
individual haulers mix our trash with everybody else's, so there's no
I
way
agree,
to tell.
but I think it takes the Gallatin City Council and the Hendersonville Aldermans, because they've signed a contract that we will pay $100,000. So, just to,
But-
for this board to understand, there's some legal contracts out there.
But
So-
from my point, if they don't bill us, we're not gonna pay it, so that's kind of.
There we
where
are.
I'm at.
So David, 33,000 that's above the 100,000. What is the run rate for that for annual? What would you expect that to be on? an
That
annual?
is the annual.
That's an annual, okay.
Right, I've got the first 3 months falling, but for time, it's just in your packet, it's kind of the same. And that's kind of a normal year. You look at the large numbers, but most of that's flow through for a tire grant where we receive revenue and just pay right over to them to dispose of tires throughout the county. That's the end of my report on the disposal fees, unless there's any questions.
No report.
So it sounds like there's not a lot of efficiencies here, it's just kind of one-off stuff that we need to keep something budgeted for. Is that a fair assessment at this point?
On the disposal, I would just leave as is, it's pretty much accurate.
Okay. All right, yeah, I'm good to move on then. Mr. Mayor, anything from you?
No report, Mr. Chairman.
Eric?
No report, Mr. Chairman.
We've got a reporting trustee here, pages 18 and 19.
And to say one thing, the trustee is very limited on what we can invest in, so it's predominantly CDs and money market accounts and the state investment pool.
Okay.
So I have a question on this. Under the banks, the First Horizon and the Pinnacle Bank, those amounts collectively about $110 million. The fact that there's nothing in front of that, would that mean that those are not in an interest-bearing account?
The First Horizon is in an interest-bearing checking account, and our checking account at times will actually be as high as our CDs, based on how the stuff.
I would recommend that we add that, because it looks like we're not getting any return on that money.
I'll send that to the trustee. She's not here. but-
So both accounts, the First Horizon and the Pinnacle Bank,
Yes, sir.
are both interest-bearing accounts?
I believe we're phasing out the First Horizon, going to Pinnacle, if I'm not mistaken.
And the funds that are in there, look like there's some, even amounts. Are those compensating balances, or are those just like CDs or bonds, or are they just sitting there as an investment?
They're CDs,
Okay.
they've got like their 12 and 14-month CDs based on the rate at the time. And all of them have to actually be collateralized. That's one of the reasons it brings down the rates too. Anything over FDIC coverage actually has to be collateralized.
Okay, last question. Who determines the amounts in which bank those are invested at?
That would be the trustee. And you can do a investment committee, but we haven't done one in this county. There was a discussion several years back, but it was determined that probably wasn't gonna get any better returns than what the trustee was getting at the time.
So the investment committee, as I understand it, would be the one that has oversight of which accounts and which banks?
If you adopted it, they would work with the trustee.
So right now, we don't have a policy that addresses that.
Or a standing investment committee.
Well, we haven't had to worry about it for 15 years because no one's paid interest, so now.
Now we do.
Well, what we ran into when we had the money for the hospital funds is you're very limited what you can buy longer term investments for. It's based on the balance of your, it's based on the balance of your lowest fund, which is the courthouse and jail maintenance fund, which carries less than $300,000. It's a percentage of that. So we can't carry any long-term investments, and just like right now, we can't even buy federal securities because they're not AAA rated anymore. We were notified, we knew that, but we were notified by email too. The state wanted to make sure we were aware that our investments require AAA, and the feds are no longer AAA.
So in order to get the investment committee to hold a meeting, would that be as a recommendation of this committee?
I think you needed a resolution set one up. We haven't set one up.
Okay.
That's where we're at. Now,
So
we'd have to
that's-
go back and research it.
So that would be the
because it's been several years.
recommendation?
Yeah, it'd be a recommendation, and
Okay.
look about setting it up, because that was a discussion, but it's been, I would say it's been about 10 years ago, that discussion, so I'd have to go back and research it a little bit.
But to Mr. Zimmerman's point, there really hadn't been a need to do that until now. And now it's substantive in terms of the returns and the amounts. So I would like to make a recommendation that we have a resolution to have that committee formed and at least understand the process and develop policies around our investment strategy.
Especially the way the feds raised interest.
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion or questions?
One other pertinent item, some of these investments are actually bond proceeds, which they're arbitrage, they're subject to arbitrage, and right now we have hired consultants that are doing calculations on arbitrage, so some of this is potentially gonna be rebated to the IRS anyway.
Yep, understand.
Or quite a portion of it possibly.
Is the investment subcommittee, is that part of the 2012 Financial Management Act, or is that a different?
Yes, it would be there, but we need to see what all we have to do to set it up right now. There's one under general law.
Okay, and which, how many members would be on that?
I don't know, that's why I'm saying we're gonna have to go back and research it.
Okay,
It's
but we
been
can
quite a
approve
while.
it now to at least research it. and-
Right, get me and Eric to go back and
Okay.
see what all entails at this point and talk to the trustee.
So there's a motion and a second on the floor to vote for what Mr. David said over here, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes. So, yeah, we'll explore looking at convening an investment committee. Obviously, $300 million in cash could be working a lot harder for us, potentially.
But yeah, but we're very limited on those, so when you look
Okay.
at it, I'm
That's what I
not
meant,
sure.
potentially.
But the policy would just provide guidelines. I mean, it would provide some governance around investment strategy, yeah.
And we'll bring back the investment statutes too. They're very, very limited
Right.
on what you can do.
Yeah, great.
Moving on, I'd ask David to give us a quick update on our deposition and a few other things that we have today.
Let me start on my report. One item I don't have on my report, but since it's a report, this morning we're looking at sales tax and we have the first 3 months in. By and large, a very weak year for sales tax so far. The first month was a little over 105, and the second two were a little over 103 over last year. So that does show, probably because of the inflation and the amount of time it's been running, that it is starting to potentially have an impact. If you start thinking it's running, inflation and growth are together, it's probably running more than that, a couple of points. none of the rest of them are really enough data to see anything, just sales tax. On our debt position, if you go to page number 20 and 21, and we don't have no double numbering here, so it should be much easier. Page 20 shows the first set of numbers with the total going to the far right to the 279,935 million, or the 279,935,000. That is the principal debt for the county. That's all the debt, the principal. The next one going down, there's a 73,588,818. That is all your interest on all your bonds. And then if you go to the next page on the far right, the 353,523,818 is your actual total. If you go down into the notes, it tells when these are callable. We don't have any callable for a couple of years, but at the same time, rates are up right now, so we are definitely not in the market to call any of these bonds. I will give you an idea of what rates we do have, if you, because I think that is a lot of interest. If you look at the very first set, because I'm just going to go across the columns, and it says 2021-A refinancing. That was a refinancing bond, and our TIC true all interest cost was 0.27% because it was a refinancing. And this is how much your rates vary even for the county. The 2021-2 was a 1.58%. That's the yield over the whole length of the bond. The 2015, the general and education, was 2.86, and your 2019 was 3%. The 2020, if you look at those two, is 1.57%, and your 2021A-2 is 1.7%. If you look at the actual faces, they'll be significantly higher because these bonds were issued at a premium, so that's the true interest cost there, with all costs added in and accounting for premiums and discounts.
So I have one question. What would you say the average duration of these bonds are? What's the average maturity?
The longest we have is 20 years. So right now, the furthest we have was to 42 is our last year. We have a significant. If you look at the actual payoffs, like this year right here, we actually have a high year, 21,660,000, and the next year it goes down to 12 million. So we actually have a very strong principal payoff this coming year, and then it drops after that.
So they're due to cycle out.
Yes.
A number of those. So
and
you say those are a premium, most of those?
They were all sold at a premium.
Okay.
And then the thing is, if you look, we have, if you go over to the page 21 and you look down the payments, your first year is like 31.1, and then after that is around 21.4 for several years, because we did issue them all at equal amortization. We didn't issue any balloons or anything. All of them are fixed rate, no variable rate bonds, so and as I'm saying right now, with the increasing interest rate, is unless something significantly changed when the next group does become callable on December 31st, 2024, unless something changes significantly, they're probably not going to be in our benefit to call any of those and refinance. And we have refinanced everything, the older ones that were a couple years ago that were actually advantageous for the county for about $1 million worth of savings.
So any of those subject to penalty if you retire them early?
They're not retirable. That's the earliest
Okay.
call, so you couldn't call them. The only thing we could do is potentially forward them, a forward call by putting investments into, but that'd be very not advantageous, and I'm not even sure it'd be legal for us to do it. We'd have to look at it real closely.
Thank you.
So we're really kind of tied up on those particular debts right now, at least for 2 years. Now, you can call them for cash 2 years from now, which would be advantageous, but not as a refinance would not be. Does anybody have any questions on?
So this is just the bond debt. We still have, what, 50, 60 million other, because where's the 411 million?
There's never been. That's what I'm saying. People were saying 411, that was all interest and principal, and we paid off some last year and this year. So your actual true principal, and let's go back to that. Your true principal this year is $279.9 million, and 21 of that's going to be paid off this year. So roughly a little under 10%.
Okay.
About what, 8? So it's a pretty good payoff for 1 year. And if you compare us to other counties, we're actually, because you can pull it on the state website, I can give anybody these links, we're actually lower compared to a lot of the counties our size or larger.
What would you say the total dollar amount was?
On the principal, it's $279.9 million.
25 of that'll be paid off. So it'd be about a net 250.
Yeah, 21.6, so, yeah. A little over 250. Which is a pretty good, strong payoff this coming year. We have fairly good for the following years, but as I'm saying, the only way this could come out good for us is to actually refinance portions as cash. And you can do series or portions thereof, so you don't have to refund an entire bond, but there is a cost. So we would have to advertise to pull them in and have everybody involved. So we'd have to determine if it's saving you enough to go through one series. But you do have options in starting December 31st, 2024. Item B, C, and D are really related. We're right now implementing GASB 87, 96, and 99, which we've already done 87 where we had to pull all the leases on our books. 96 is software. And then D is actually given a status report, which has been several questions of where we're at on the 2012 Act and where we're at on several projects. So if the committee wants me to, I can go through that memo rather quickly and kind of give you the quick.
I think that would be helpful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do we want to go through the whole thing or just focus down on like the 2012 Act?
Well, the 12 Act for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if we look, there's two major portions of the 12 Act we have not done at this point. Number one is the purchase orders and the bidding for highway, and number two is the chronos for the rest of the county. It's only been partially done. And if you look at it, it tells which sections, but under the 12 Act, that is, the first one is the purchase orders are right now not part of the ERP or done through finance for highway, nor is the bidding other than things running through there. So that's the big portion. And then the other thing that we've got out there right now is the chronos timekeeping. And if we go to page 23, kind of tell you what we have done this year. Back in January, we actually implemented the new ERP software. We've actually implemented part of the employee self-service. We're planning to implement the rest of it over several months, but right now we want IT with us to vet those to make sure they're completely secure, because there has been issues with those in the past. We pulled over highways benefits, I believe, in September. July, we brought back the enrollments and the benefits completely back into finance from the HR department. And as far as the chronos goes, if you go, there's a large section of the departments, if you read through there, that we have implemented, a large section we haven't. The problems we've got right now is a couple. A lot of the departments we've got remaining have their own personnel policy, so there's a fair amount of programming left. And number two, we have several departments that actually are paying employees in advance, which causes extreme problems with automations and potential overpayments. It's been that way since I've came here, and they're actually on the bottom of 24. It actually gives a full listing of all the departments that are still, their full-time employees are paid in advance. So for instance, they're paid every 2 weeks, and on the Thursday of the second week, they're paid through that Friday that follows, that immediately following Friday. So it creates issues, and most of the time, the departments will go back and recover the funds. We've had a few instances where they gave us a few, I think we've got one right now that hasn't, went back and collected the funds due, but most of the time the departments go back and collect them if somebody's overpaid because they don't have enough leave. But that is creating quite a bit of issues for any type of automation. And then the other one we ran into is the EMS actually has an advanced scheduling system that they were to maintain, and I believe right now it needs to be reconfigured. They're having issues maintaining it. So it needs to be, the problem is it really needs to probably be pulled over and us maintain it, but we don't have the staffing or the manpower to do it.
Can I ask a question? So when I look at the bullet points here, are there some more critical than others?
There's a very critical one, and this is where we've got here. We had an old payroll system and manual timesheets everywhere. We adopted the 2012 Act to alleviate it. We started pulling in Chronos and the ERP software, but what it's created, because if you look, there's a long list of other projects. I'm a big one on cross-training. Right now, we do not have a lot of cross-training on the new payroll or Chronos system. That's the number one. But we actually don't have the staff for the cross-training at this point. We're trying to get that handled. The number two issue, I would say, we have some departments that are having issues with their manual timekeeping. They need to be pulled over to the Chronos system too. The issue we've got, one, is we need to come in because we just brought in the payroll system, and we're over the next, probably to March, still developing the SOPs, because some things are only done annually. We're still updating SOPs and trying to start the cross-training. So over the next several months, we're working with the payroll system that we're operating right now since this past year. That's created an issue with a real crunch as far as doing cross-training and doing anything with the Kronos. Because we've ran out of staff, we ran quite a bit of overtime last year. But the biggest challenges we do have is the employees that are paid in advance and the number of personnel policies. We feel right now some of the personnel policies are, and we've got the payroll manager here too, she does a lot of the configurations, are configured probably 80 to 90% completion, but we've had to stop to work up SOPs and try to do some cross-training at this point. And we're also trying the stuff that we got for enrollments from HR was completely manual also. We want to put employee self-service over the next 12 months and automate that out too.
So let me, if you don't mind me making one observation and maybe one recommendation. It may be helpful for the committee when we see this to put these in some type of ranking or priority for you. And when I see a number of these, the lack of staff or resources is an issue. I think in order to take these bullets and understand from a committee's perspective, what should we be doing to help you get get this done, is to put them in maybe 2 or 3 buckets of, high, medium, low priority, and then understand what's the headwind in each of those for you to get those done. And if it's staff resources, then that's what it is. I mean, but that's a thought.
Right now, payroll is the most urgent.
Okay.
The thing on it is we've moved a long way, but we have to slow down and stop and do the SOPs and the cross-training or have additional staff. That's kind of where we're at. We run a lot of overtime. So right now I've kind of stopped anything moving forward while we're updating all the SOPs, looking at the internal controls. And then we've also brought on board enrollments, and we've been doing the training and stuff for that. So as soon as it gets done, we're going to start automating it. Those are our 2 number 1 to get done and get cross-training and payroll. Number 2, if we're going to follow the act, would probably start looking at, which would be a completely new staff member, would be purchasing and highway. If we're going to pull over POs and purchasing, we would need another staff. We brought over the benefits. When we brought over the enrollments, we could find enough staff time with the enrollment in there to pull it over. And we're hoping to get enough time long-term to handle it by automation, but we've got to get there. So I think the payroll one, we can slow walk it and move over the next couple of years, or we can add staffing and probably knock it out in 12 months. That's kind of where we're at. If we're going to pull over purchasing and finish that portion, we would need a new staff member to actually do that function.
So I guess in the form of a recommendation would be to take the bullets, put those in a priority sequence, and also include in that what is the driver. Is it staff? Is it time, or is it both? And for us to come back as a committee and understand how we can actually help you get that done in terms of making other recommendations. So, and I hear you on staff. And when I read these, it looks like resources may be some of the issues on most of these. But as a committee, that would help us understand what is a priority for you, so we can help you.
Number 1's cross-training right now.
Yeah, okay.
And then along with that prioritization, if you could give us a timeline of how long these items could take based on the resources. I heard you say, if we slow walk it over a year,
Several years for the
payroll, or if it's something more urgent we need to address in 6 months, I need 20 hours, 20 man hours a week to get this in 6 months, or 10 for a year. Some type of gauge.
Let's talk about the history of the Kronos, and it's been here for quite a while. Initially, IT was going to help with this. That's kind of how we got it. IT was going to do the implementation for Kronos and Munis Payroll. We got down the road and they really didn't understand finance. They didn't understand internal controls. So what we did is we actually, and we didn't ask for any state, we pulled all that back into finance and started the implementations. The IT, and it's not the current director, he took those 2 positions and actually turned those into support for IT because they needed it. At the time, they didn't have enough support. So that's kind of how we got where we're at right now, is they were to help with that. And then also, at the time, the original agreement was that the administration of the Munis system was to be done by IT also. Well, we determined IT doesn't really understand POs or other issues, so what happened was they assigned somebody that was ultimately terminated they made significant internal control changes. Audit found it. We started looking at the logs. The person didn't understand, and then I think it was me and Miss Browning spent several overtime hours of actually trying to fix it. After that, we actually were given, I believe it was $20,000 for consultants, which we moved back down to 15. The problem being the consultants aren't necessarily available in the time we pass the knowledge back and forth. They're not really as usable. So, and we've also got overtime. What may be the most advantageous to knock this out would be to take 5, 6, 7,000 of the overtime, the 20,000 for consulting, and pull in a staff member and go ahead and knock it out. Because otherwise, it's going to drag. Right now, it's going to drag on because it takes. Like right now, say if we went to the libraries, the personnel policy needs to be completely reworked for the 5 libraries. Circuit court clerk has their own, highway has their own policy, so it needs to be completely reworked for them. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We really need time for the payroll, or we need something to push this forward. And if we're going to do the highway purchasing, we actually need staffing because it is not, there's not enough staffing to do it.
And if I can revisit, I think I've heard the clerk's office, Catherine Strong's office, say that it would be a benefit to them time-wise to get this done. So
We've-
how much time do they put in because they don't have Chronos
We've
right
tried
now?
to contact her office, and did she ever respond back to us?
No.
Yeah, I had them, the contractor, to see about actually implementing her office, because we were looking at it. We don't think her policy is so dissimilar to the counties that we can't adapt it in a reasonable amount of time. So we were actually going to go out even before we finished our SOPs and the cross training. We were going to try to pull hers in because she mentioned it the other day. Because she's a small, well, she's not a smaller office, but she's a less complex office. So we're kind of down into there.
Chair recognizes Mr. Becker.
Appreciate it. I'm just curious, what year did we start? It seemed like we've been doing this Chronos implementation for years.
Yeah, we've been doing it, well, we never started it for years, and then the schools was gonna come in when the school separated, then we started after the school separation back in 16, but it took us 2 years after that, so I think you
We
started
didn't
working
have,
on
we
it.
didn't have an IT department when that started. So that's what confused me. You said it started with
They brought it
IT.
in to help us implement it, yes. There was nobody to implement it when we adopted the 12 Act.
That was before we had the IT department
I had two
in-house.
in-house IT staff,
Okay, okay.
and I gave those up
When you were
to,
saying that, that confused me because,
I actually had 2 full-time IT staff in my office that I gave over to IT to implement.
I got you.
And then when we talked about doing the implementation, there was a discussion more finance or IT was to do it, and they actually had 2 project managers. And both of them were terminated because of lack of,
That's fine. I just
Yeah.
wanted,
yeah, we had 2
I got
full-time staff.
confused by the timeline when you were speaking. So
Right,
I
we
appreciate
had 2 full-time, IT people and actually a part-time too, because the one from over at the schools. So we had 2.5 staff members at one time.
it. Okay, thank you.
And if I can ask, Toby, in highway, how much time will this save? You got people over there with manual time cards?
No.
No.
We clock in, we got a machine, we got a system to clock in, clock out.
Will this when we get Chronos implemented for you, will it save time?
I don't know that it'll save time. It'll probably create more information for finance.
It'll remove some of the manual processes, because right now they pass us
And they're in your office, the manual.
stuff. Well,
So
they're
They're
manual
doing the
too.
manual work, not, I'm just trying to see where the,
His office is doing the manual too.
Yeah.
So right now, we're hoping to do a full data drop, but we ran into several problems. One is the employees paid in advance, and then number 2, the sheriff's department has several complex issues. Is that the best way to put it? It's causing some lack of automation.
It probably will save some time. There is some information that we have to send back and forth to get everything done, but yes, it'd probably get better.
I'm just trying to weigh the cost of putting the resources in and how much we can save, that's all, sorry.
I know I've had this conversation with somebody here at this table, but what constitutes a person being paid in advance?
It was set up that way before I came, and I've been not a proponent of it the whole time, because it creates, and it's only for full-time, it creates the possibility of them getting paid for time that they didn't work. And number 2, it requires estimates for the last week. So just like right now, we have one employee that left that was paid for, is it 4 extra hours? Almost 2 days, because we have to know
It's
by,
mind-boggling.
we have
I
to
thought
know
you meant
by.
it was like attorney retainers or
Well,
something. like-
no, it's over 100
These are
employees.
employees.
It's a whole group of departments here and over 100 employees. And here's the way it has to work. They have to tell us on these full-time employees by Tuesday if they've quit, because we've got to have the actual payroll worked up, and we've got to have it to the bank by 4:30 on Wednesday to do a direct deposit to drop on Thursday for people to be paid through Friday. So we have to have them to tell us. Well, if they don't know, they don't tell us if it's a newer employee or when they don't have leave, they get paid for time. Historically, it's been the responsibility of the departments to recover those, and we've had at least one right now that hasn't recovered some funds.
If I may, the other problem this creates is we've just recently had to sue somebody to recover overpayment because they didn't voluntarily give the money back. So it goes further down the road than just simply overpaying somebody.
And then it leaves us in the position who's responsible for getting it back, the department or us, and we've had, on my 15 years, I just had one, it's balked on it so far.
Is there a fix? Can we get everybody,
I think right now we need to look at the Chrono system and see if we can first step would be make all new full-time employees in advance. Because you gotta think, if we did this, and I mentioned this 15 years ago, of doing that or making them off, if we'd have done that right now, for instance, Mr. Isabel's office is a good example. He's got 2 employees, his would have all no longer been that way. There's been enough turnover over the last 10 years. Most of finance, of all of IT. So things we can keep going down this with the county growing, it gets a larger and larger problem. The reason we didn't deal with it in the past is because administration was against it. Some of the members were against changing the payroll. The easiest way to do it versus holding people's payback at this time would be all new employees, full-time, have to be held back at least a week. That would fix the problem. It won't help us a lot now, but it will over time.
Would this need to go through the policy subcommittee, or is this something we could?
It'd probably be best to, but I mean, really, the policy subcommittee, you guys, one, they recommend back to you to take it or leave it. And number 2, you guys can send down things requesting the policy subcommittee to look at things. So it's kind of a two-way. I'd recommend sending down the policy subcommittee to see if they can come out with the best plan to alleviate some of these estimated payrolls. Highway's got a holdback. For his, for example, is not a real issue. Toby has a holdback. Is it a week? I believe, and it's down there. I believe it's a week, isn't it? Sheriff's Department has a holdback. EMS, ECC. Huh?
A day, but yes.
Oh, is it a day?
Well, they cut off on Sunday, payroll runs Monday.
And we run payroll Monday, so, but there's enough time that we don't estimate theirs, we use true payrolls. And if we get them into Chronos and automated, it'd be even cleaner.
then if I can, in the interest of time, make a motion that we send this to the policy committee and recommend that they also speak to the officials in each of the areas to make sure that they're on board and understand how this is gonna work. If they do recommend that we start new employees without this pay forward.
So it's primarily just to look at the issue and develop policies around that and what the impact of that would be if you flipped it. Okay, I'll second that motion.
Could I add to that motion with the policy subcommittee, just to spend a little bit of time in that committee as well to figure out how we can get more compliant in the 2012 Act in general. I'm getting a lot of concern just hearing, obviously Jerry was in here telling us he was having these discussions years ago when he was the committee chair and before that, so.
Can we pass, this is actually the state's consolidation report, and it even talks about how many are consolidated. That may help you kind of give you, right now, as far as our size, there's not another one where they haven't completely consolidated in the highway stuff. I can say that, because I actually looked through them today and numbered them. And the most pertinent thing on this is page number 8. It actually talks about the history of our act. Bob, you need one?
I'm good.
Page number 8, actually, the first, second, third, fourth, fifth bullet point is all about Sumner County's Financial Management Act not being implemented. I'll say one thing, our payrolls came leaps and bounds, and Ned's doing a great job, but the issue we've got is we're gonna take a long time, or we're gonna need staffing. I mean, that's kind of where we're at. Last year, there was quite a bit of overtime work to try to get in the payroll. A lot of overtime in their office.
So let's just vote on Terry's motion to send the paid in advance topic to policy subcommittee real quick, and then we'll
Yes.
jump to this, so we're not mixing cocktails here.
Yes.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes. All right, so we'll, next time we reconvene with the policy subcommittee, we'll talk through paid in advance employees and try and reach out to the department heads and see if we can nicely ask them to,
Now-
all future employees paid in arrears.
Yeah, before we move on to the
Yes.
2012 Private Act, I would like to go back to my original thought on the bullet points and putting those in a priority.
And before we get off the paid in advance for a moment, you mentioned that we've sued one person. Is that different from the one person that's outstanding, or do we still have another one?
No, that's
outs-
the one that's outstanding.
The one that's outstanding?
Yes.
I went to legal and had them to request that they take action, and they did timely and very, Steve ended up handling things, did very good job.
But
with getting the money.
usually it's smooth.
Yeah, but the thing is, it requires the department to work with us too.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to make sure it wasn't.
Well, we have another one with 2 days out, but we're working with the department right now to figure out where they're at on it.
Thank you.
I think there's about, is it 2.5 days? We sent them some emails, but 2 days. Well, I don't know where they're at, we'll send them an email in the morning and ask kind of where we're at on that. If it needs to go to legal or where it's gonna go. And what happened with that one, it was a brand new employee, no leave, so they had Tuesday to tell us whether Tuesday past employee was still here and they quit on Wednesday. After
Friday.
Right.
Well, he didn't show up Friday, they fired him on Friday.
So how did he end up for 2 days?
Well, because he didn't show up on Monday.
Okay, Monday, okay. So he basically got paid for 2 days.
And we're spending hundreds of man hours trying to, get a couple hours back, so.
Well, the other one was quite a bit of money, it was
Efficiency is-
$50-some $100.
What was that judgment for?
I think it's
4,500, I think.
This is painful.
But that one's 4,500, this one's a small one. But the thing is, when we send it to legal, they
So many man hours.
may want to just ignore it because of the cost, but the problem is you're sending a bad signal.
Yeah.
You gotta figure out which one do you wanna do, is it worth it to send a signal you can't, you gotta return the money, or is it worth the, attorney's time, because we're gonna spend more legal time. So you really have a no-win on that when those happen.
Yeah, and if I could address you for the subcommittee, if you could stress to them how many man hours and how much it's costing us, especially, if the department heads aren't working it out ahead of
Not
time.
just the legal standpoint, but also,
This man hours,
The
for $50, that they're all
confusing.
running around and calling each other, this is
Yeah, it's-
insane.
and ongoing maintenance too of hundreds of employees that
Yeah,
are different
yeah.
policy than everybody else.
Yeah.
And then they're statutorily allowed to have different policies, that's something counties have to deal with. So we've got, is it 13 policies? Does that sound right?
I counted 10 or 11.
Generally, I think
And
it's 13.
perhaps,
Is that kind of EMS's adaptation and all?
perhaps if it comes down to it and we cannot get this implemented, we should consider charging those departments back the man hours it takes to run down their employees. Just saying. So if you could bring that
Man
up.
hours to get the man hours.
I know.
Yeah, really what we need to do, I think the best thing is to get the policy subcommittee on board, and then we program Cronus so we can keep up with the new employees separately, and just the requirement that all new employees, even by county commission resolution, that's how we did direct deposit. A lot of counties never get direct deposit. We have 100% direct deposit here, because if you don't have a good reason, you won't get a check. If you don't have it stolen or something, so you gotta do direct deposit, because checks cost the county a lot of money if you do it the other way.
All right, quick time check, we've got about 12 minutes probably for everybody's got to dash to the other meeting. David, do you have any? Go ahead.
Let me get to this point.
I'll send you a priority
Okay,
list.
that's
today.
fine.
I think I'll take this list in an email, and I'll just mark the sections we consider priority. The one thing we're gonna run into is number one for me is the cross-training, but that's something we can slow walk or move around stuff and add staffing.
That'll be good. Thank you.
But it's the number one concern, cross-training and payroll right now. Just because we've moved quickly, that's where we're at.
So on this report from the comptroller, what were the highlights here, just us being out of policy?
If you look at the very back page, number 8, it talks about our Financial Management Act where we have amended it, but we still have not implemented it, which I thought that was pertinent, kind of gives you the history there. And then if you go to the first page, and what they're saying is there's 31 counties that are fully centralized, school, county, everybody, 33 that has some version of centralization, and then 31 of the smaller ones that do not. But every county our size and larger does have all the highway POs and stuff all consolidated at this point. So that's one reason, just like we have the stuff on here tonight, that's one reason Toby's having problems too. We're a bigger county, they've never consolidated, so he's been left over there stuck with it. So that's, to be fair with him, that's why his items are here.
Toby Gate.
But, he's kind of been left at the big county with this.
It's just, getting into this thing and figuring out the problems as you go. I got solutions, but.
What's the best way this committee can help you get everything kind of compliant with the act?
We'd have to have staff to
I
consolidate
think
it.
it's Colin's a work in progress, and I'm definitely willing to work with finance department. I have a lot of trust in David, and I feel like he's a great teammate. And I try to be very transparent and open, and I call him every week about something. So,
I call Toby.
and when I don't call him or Eric, I'm usually in trouble.
But the thing is, to comply with the act, it does require us to do the POs and purchasing, and we will need staffing, and we will need to set it up in a way that works for them.
Okay.
And we're
How do we
capable and happy to do it, but the thing is, it's gonna be a whole new department that has a lot of POs and a lot of bids, so.
I think the thing that, as far as the POs go, is because I'm usually at the office around 5:30 in the morning. We start our crews out at 6:30 just to get out to the jobs by 7. And so, and then we work to 5 or a little after. And that's one item that the POs have been a good thing, because if something, emergency or something comes up, I have that capability. And that's one thing that me and David's worked on. If we do this, then I have the leniency to have an emergency PO to where I don't have to chase somebody down and make sense of that.
And we'll stagger employees too if we do that. To kind of give you an idea of what we got for purchasing right now, we have one employee, spends about 90% of their time on purchasing. When I was at Green back in 2002, which is less than half our size, there was 2 full-time people in purchasing. So that kind of tells you they did 3-way matching and stuff, but we're doing the bare minimum to meet internal controls, and we don't have the highway, and that's how we stay down to 1 person in purchasing.
So David, let me ask you, would it be helpful if this PO consolidation question be recommended to go to the subcommittee for review? I do think it would be helpful to have another set of eyes in terms of process.
How about what I would ask is if have me and Toby to look at it first, and then us to bring something back
Perfect.
to the subcommittee, because it would affect us the most, and then and then the other thing, if we're gonna look about implementing it, maybe implementing it sometime after July. I know that's a while, that way you can go through a budget cycle if we need another employee and we'll have to ask mid-year. Because mid-year budget changes I'm a finance person, I hate them, so I'd really hate to be down there asking. I hate when people add things unnecessarily mid-year to budget.
Yeah, I
That's
think
what I'm
all this
saying.
weeks together, we've got to implement this faster. We don't want to add more complexity to it, so I'm okay with the budget cycle approval. But I would like to see org charts, maybe not an exact org chart, but just
Well, we already have an org chart.
an overview of the staffing changes you're looking for, how that would impact highway, and then kind of what the differences between the highway roles are now and what level of role you'll need.
And I have to talk to Toby, but the way I would see it is we'd need another employee. We'd do 1 late and 1 early to grab his hours. And then the other thing we do, we take our current policy, which he's kind of trying to work with anyway. And as I'm saying, it does have things for emergency, so I don't think it's a lot of adaptation other than staffing and a little bit of training. But it's something I would like to sit down with Toby even before the committee, because it affects him more than anybody else, and then me and him go to the committee.
I'll amend Todd's motion, where he motioned to send it to the subcommittee, and I'll amend that first it goes through Mr. Long's office with Toby, and that they work up a plan and get it to the subcommittee. This is our October meeting. I'm not sure till their next meeting when that would B.
We don't have a standing policy subcommittee, but I'm sure we could call them in the next 45 days.
And that's my amendment.
Before the first of the year, for sure.
I'll second
I'll just add to that real quick that we do meet before the end of the year.
Okay.
December.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
David, do you see any issues with any of these purchase order
No.
exceptions?
Well, there's a couple. Toby did not bid the milling. Let me give a fair shake to Toby. Judy didn't do her milling, first time ever. So Toby, when he went back and looked at his invoices, he didn't see a bid, which we had already sent up here because they didn't do the bid. So Toby went by and didn't bid $42,000 worth of millings. It's violated state law in the bidding. It was an accident, but the county received the benefit, and we are going to have to pay it. So I would recommend, even though we do go ahead and pay that. The other one's just a simple one where he did a PO before the expenditure, which audit will give you finding, but there's nothing notorious.
That's something that I would like to say is, that was back in July. I think the correction I've done, we have a Monday morning meeting that we have a 2-week schedule that we go by. I've got every job listed, who's working on what, when and where, and the type of material they're using. And one thing that I just added to that, because of this, my administrative assistant was on vacation that week. And there was an assumption where there shouldn't have been an assumption that the blanket PO extended out over that time period. Since that time frame, after my June meeting, we have implemented that we double check and we go back over the POs. If somebody's not here, we're always checking to make sure that the PO's got us covered. And so that was in July, and that hasn't happened again.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to group and approve 1 through 4.
Let me just say, number 2A1, probably just need to approve that for informational only, because technically, I don't think you should approve it because it violated state law and you can't approve so you guys are just aware that I went ahead and paid it.
Okay.
Now, item 3A1, yes, I would say approve the PO one, but the first one, I would just say approve to docket it in the minutes. I wouldn't actually approve it. Because you can't
I like
approve a
that
violation
idea.
of law.
Okay.
I don't want the committee looking bad.
Yeah, good point.
Okay. So to David's point,
To David's point, yes.
Just docket it.
So, group and approve the rest of them.
Can we talk about item 4, dump truck bid?
That
That
one,
was
let-
a
Y'all
bid.
can, I'm leaving.
Let me explain it really quick, and this is nothing. Toby bid 2023
No,
dump
This
trucks.
was Judy's truck.
Judy. They sent Toby a 2024 truck. He didn't realize that he went ahead and titled and used it. At that point, we're gonna have to pay the vendor. The 24 is probably worth more than the 23, but when you do a bid, what you receive has to be exactly like that, so we didn't technically follow the bid,
And
so probably got an issue there.
We waited a year and a half for the trucks. We needed them. And so I'm sitting there thinking, they're here, great, we lettered them, baby, we're ready to roll.
He gave him a newer one.
I was so excited that when David hit me with it, I was like, because we've had this, in big corporations, when you get it, sometimes the year changes in the wait time. But there was no cost increase, nothing, we just got the trucks like we wanted, and
I would
same
just
body,
dock it.
everything was right, it's just a year.
I would just docket this one too, because honestly, he violated the bid, didn't mean to. He got the thing, went ahead and titled it. I couldn't say, hey, send it back, because when he's waited year number 2, it's titled. I mean, it's no longer a brand new vehicle. And used, actually, I think he'd used it, titled, and numbered it at that point.
So I went back and looked at previous minutes for this committee, and there have been other exceptions that
Yes.
have flowed through. So this is not just like a one-time off.
Right.
So what you think you've got in place now will kind
I
of
do,
address that?
I really do.
Okay.
And we had some issues before where we were calling a Nashville company to do some work on our equipment. Well, they opened a PO because of the conversation, so it'll be ready to go. They're typing it in, so when that equipment gets there, we did not know that. And then when we went to send the equipment over to Nashville, like 3 days later, we opened the PO and sent it. So it looks like we're back, we're doing the PO late. And so now what we do is when we have that conversation and we're sending it out, we do the PO right then when we're on the phone with them.
So I have a question. If this was consolidated in with purchasing here and finance, how would it have been different?
There's only one way to do it if you're doing a receiving report, three-way matching. That's what I'm saying, it's more staff intensive, but you avoid these. The first one, pretty easy, when Toby asked for a PO on the first one, we would have said, hey, you need a bid, and it would have stopped. Just like some of his other issues. Two things Toby's new, and number two, we are one of the largest counties where it's not, or actually the largest county where highway's not folded in this way. So my point of view, even though it's gonna require more staffing for internal controls and your growth, I think you need to fold Toby's stuff in. But I think me and him need to get together and get policies that
Right,
work.
along with what we motioned.
And then bring it back, staffing July to make it effective maybe September.
Yep.
But find times, because, set up staffing and times and everything that works with Toby.
So this committee would see it again in January?
Well, if we meet in December, then we bring it back in January.
Okay.
So I think there's a motion on the table to approve 1 and 3, and then you said docket approve 1 and 4, or 2 and 4?
What I mean, the docket 2A1, which is the Rogers Group, and 4, but then approve 3A1.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right, motion passes. Was there anything else in here we needed to address, or we good to? I think somebody else needs to call it, but.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Make a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
We're
Just a
adjourned.
question. Are we gonna be at